Hi guys, Gareth here from Heartfelt Horsemanship. My topic for today is going to be the difference between desensitizing and learned helplessness. For those that don't know, learned helplessness is when a horse or any animal has had a fear stimulus put on them and is not removed until they just give up all hope and shut down. We don't want that with horses. It's been a common tactic, even with some natural horsemanship practitioners, that it causes the horse to not care about any stimulus, and they've mistakenly called that desensitizing. The reason we don't want a horse to shut down from learned helplessness is at some point something is going to happen that's going to cause them to explode. They also become extremely dull if you train them through learned helplessness. It's also cruel, in my opinion. So we're going to talk about the difference between desensitizing and learned helplessness. What we're also going to cover is, and this is something that we even see in some of our students where we don't kind of get the message through of what we're looking for. There's a lot of programs out there that give you A plus B, 1, 2, 3, and you get this. So you go through a movement, and then you go through the next movement and the next movement, and then you're finished. We don't do that. What we're aiming for is relaxation. Every single one of the movements we do has a purpose. So we're going to look at what we're aiming for in terms of that relaxation, what the actual clues that I'm looking for that shows that my horse is relaxed. I can disengage my horse 300 times, but if that scary stimulus stays there, or the horse stays scared, I'm not going to carry on and move to the next request, or I'm probably not going to stay on my horse if I get to 10 times of disengaging them and they don't relax. I'll get off to the groundwork. I'm definitely not going to put more pressure or put a more difficult task on, because then you are going to have an explosion. The horse is going to buck, rear, bolt. Something is going to happen. So it's not a checklist of 4 core movements, back up, disengage, 4 quarters, then on the circle, done, now I can jump on my horse. This is a case of back up, is my horse still relaxed? If not, maybe disengage. Then go back to your backup. Is my horse relaxed? Is my horse relaxed through each of those 4 core movements, from rhythmic pressure and from steady pressure? We want both, because rhythmic pressure is how we're going to communicate with them in an emergency, because it's their language. Steady pressure is our rider language. And when that steady pressure comes on and they get nervous because it's not their natural language, we need to make sure that they're going to stay relaxed or have a way to relax them. So that all happens on the ground. So the horse I've got here today, this beautiful little mare, has some major anxiety issues. And I think a lot of people tell me, oh, I've done everything and the horse is fine. And you look at Capri, she is a perfect example of that. She looks fine, isn't she? No, she's not fine, and we'll talk about a little bit about why. A horse can stand dead still, tolerating everything that you're asking them to do, but still not be fine. And I'll talk about why, what my signs are that she's not fine right now. She has major issues with the saddling process. She had a less than pleasant training experience, and as a result of that, she has a big issue with the saddle. The minute the saddle's on, she's very nervous. I can ride her bareback and she's fine. The saddle comes on and she's nervous. So I've got to work her through that, because we can't ride our horses bareback forever, because it's not good for their backs. So what I'm going to talk about is the things that I see that make me think that I can't ride her with a saddle on just yet. Just before I get to that though, I just want to talk a little bit about the desensitizing process. Desensitizing is a rhythmic process. So if I were to desensitize her to a rope swinging, for example, I would swing that rope rhythmically.
Rhythm.
And I'm looking for relaxation. You can see she's...
There's not relaxation yet.
Juicing on every swing right now. Moves off, I got to keep with her.
Gareth is going to keep up the pressure as she feels the need to move her feet. Now if you saw her a minute ago, she looked relaxed. Gareth started moving the rope, and you could see her whole body language from this angle arched away from Gareth and said, hey, I can't handle that. So if she does drift away, Gareth needs to stay in position and move with her.
So even where I released, she was standing still after moving, and I gave her a release. That's really rewarding the slightest try. It's definitely not a horse I'm going to jump on, because she's not accepting it, she's tolerating it, and there's a big difference there. But the thing I want to make sure people understand is I've seen people tie cans to a horse and run them around, and the horse freaks out. Some horses might get completely dull to it, so learned helplessness. Others are just going to get progressively worse with anything attached to them. If you are securing something to a horse to desensitize it, you are doing learned helplessness, not desensitizing. Because if it is secured to the horse, there's no chance of you giving a release from out here. That is not desensitizing, that is learned helplessness. And you've got to run the risk of having your horse get injured as well. Okay. So we've got to have that continual feel. You can't just strap something to the horse and chase it around in a round pen for 20 minutes or an hour and expect them to actually have a relationship built and communication that they're okay with that. There's no leadership involved in that. All you're doing is dulling them to it. And that'll work for some horses. You'll get horses that will be dull to it. They used to do it for police horses. And the important thing to remember, the police and military horses they used to do that with, is the ones that didn't do well, just got shot or chucked out and given to the public. So they chose the ones that could handle that, and that was fine. But it is not a training method if you want to help your particular horse, unless you're willing to give up on it and go to the next one and go to the next one and go to the next one, which a lot of people are. You want to get ridden and be able to give a release when they do the right thing, and that will build that level of tolerance. So I'm not going to go into detail about the desensitizing. It's part of our course. We teach it in clinics, but for her in particular, given what she's been through, it's going to take a long time. Remember, horses learn a new behavior in a few repetitions, like 3 to 5 repetitions. But to unlearn a learned behavior or fear takes hundreds of repetitions. So I could sit here and do this and get her relaxed, but that's not the point of the video that I'm doing here. The point of this video is to show what I'm looking for in that relaxation. So I will ask her to back up from rhythmic pressure. And she gives me the backup, I release. But she's not relaxed about it. Can you hear this? Can you hear the snorting? Like she's breathing kind of tight. I don't know if you guys can hear that from here. There's one of the things I look at is breathing. A horse breathing either rapidly or holding its breath is my first sign that there's no relaxation. Because I worked with the horse over the weekend. Liveries, yes, I'm not breaking lockdown, but he liveries here and I worked with him, and he looks extremely calm, even his head below the top line, but he holds his breath or he breathes rapidly, one of those two. So it's not just the head above the top line. We know that if a horse's head is above the top line, they're on adrenaline. If a horse's ears are below the top line, they're on dopamine. He was relaxed, but he still had tension because he was breathing quite rapidly. Okay. So her breathing is my first sign. Her head is above the top line. So definitely not time to ride. The other thing I'm looking at here is that she has these very deep creases. Let me see if I can bring her a little closer. Can you zoom in there, Jamie?
Yep.
There we go. She has these deep creases on the lower eyelid. Now creases on the upper eyelid indicates interest and engagement. There's no problem with that. These wrinkles on the lower eyelid, even when her eyes kind of droopy, indicate stress. Another thing is the tight nostrils. On her muzzle here, she's pulling these muscles tight. Her lips are pursed. She is still very stressed. Okay, so I'm going to try a hindquarter disengagement, and we know a hindquarter disengagement causes relaxation. But let's remember why it causes relaxation. So in the wild, a horse or a zebra, I'm going to use a zebra as an example because there's more wild zebras. If a zebra comes across a lion, they're going to bolt for 300 to 500 meters, which is the length of their flight path. When they get to the end of that, they will stop cross their hind legs over and assess the danger. What happens when they do that is their brain shifts from what we call the sympathetic nervous system, the reactive part of their nervous system, to the parasympathetic, which is the reasoning part of the brain. Now, when we work with horses, we always want them in the reasoning part of their brain. We don't want to be riding the reactive part of the brain. Accidents happen when people leave a horse in a reactive state. In a reasoning state, you're always going to have a better result. Now, as a result of how horses' brains are structured, when they cross their legs, it immediately puts them back into it. So we can imitate that and cause them to go into the reasoning part of their brain. But just like if that zebra stopped, turned, disengaged, and saw that line was still right there, they would go straight back into the reactive side of their brain and they keep running. So if that fearful stimulus is still there, and the horse hasn't reasoned that that fearful stimulus is safe, they will go back into being scared and being in the reactive side of their brain. So when people just go through A plus B, I go through my hindquarters engagement, I've done my forequarters, I've done my back, I've done my center of a circle, and the horse was fine, and they haven't looked for this relaxation, that fearful stimulus could still be there. So you've disengaged, but you haven't got the result that we were looking for from the disengagement. So if I come through here, and I'll ask her to disengage your hindquarters. Yeah, she crosses over. I've got something of a result there. There we go. So, okay, so I've got some dopamine coming through. I still don't see a total relaxation. See how quickly she dropped her head forward and then she came straight back up.
You can actually see her flank here is really quite tight. So she's not taking full, complete breaths, meaning that she's trying to keep enough wind in her lungs to have oxygen to feed her heart and muscles to evade. So though she looks really calm standing there, once she gets moving, we might actually see that she really isn't okay. And if you're not observing those signs now, you might end up with a bigger surprise when you start moving. That right there is a sign that she's still somewhat in flight mode, though she's checking in with Gareth. There's still a fair amount of flight mode here. Most people would have looked at that horse and said, oh, she's fine. Fine stands for flubbed up, insecure, neurotic, and egotistical also.
Jay, I'm going to have you carry on talking, just so I can concentrate on her because she is very tight. So I want to be able to react to and deal with her if she gets really worried.
Cool.
So you can keep talking.
So Gareth is implementing a forelock rub. Remember, the forelock rub creates a great big flow of dopamine. The affection part of that creates serotonin and oxytocin, which are the drugs, hormones that are responsible for building connection. Now, Gareth has been working with this mare for quite some time, and they have built quite a bond. But I don't think that she has made a complete change into being accepting of everything that we want to do with her. You know, somewhere she had a pretty bad deal that created all of this worry, and it's been sitting on her for a very long time. You know, some horses might have surrendered a long time ago. Clearly she has a very strong sense of survival, and she's not willing to surrender it yet. So instead of Gareth pushing her through one more desensitizing process that's going to fail, we have to look at this from a point of view of neurochemistry. It's the only way that we're going to help change. We have a lot of love for this horse, but if we do not have the chemical change that it's going to take for this, we're never going to be able to back this up for her and prove to her that this world is a little bit different from what she had seen before. You know, I think this is also why a lot of people get frustrated when they are doing rehabilitation processes with horses. Is, you know, how much time is it really going to take? And everybody thinks that they have a ton of time to commit to this, when in all actuality, you know, in a few months they're not making a change, and they don't know, wow, this could be the thing that's missing. And I think it's very important to understand that one more desensitizing process for this mare is likely going to break all of her confidence and trust and have her go into that state of survival. Because when a horse comes out of that mindset of learned helplessness, the next thing that happens if we haven't solved the problem is they go into survival mode, and they will do whatever it takes to survive. Now, most horses, that means leaving you in the paddock and choosing never to be caught again. She lives with my horses. She lives out in a gigantic paddock. And if she doesn't want to be caught, I promise you this horse can make up her mind. When she first came to us, this horse we would spend an hour or two a day sometimes working on catching and leading and having her decide that we're okay. So you can see there was quite a change there, and so Gareth went through the movements until he got a point of relaxation. Gareth didn't just take a step or two and say, okay, good, we got a step. He actually kept her moving until she offered some relaxation. Now, her offering that relaxation isn't necessarily a conscious effort. That is her going, you know, I really am okay. Her neurochemistry says, you know, I'm not that afraid, and I can probably relax around Gareth a bit. Now, if you look closely at her eyes, they are softening a lot, but there's still some wrinkles there. I've seen horses with wrinkles so bad that they've lost hair because they've stayed worried for so long. Can you imagine if you live with anxiety, you understand what that is.
And that makes the body produce more adrenaline.
And that causes the horse to produce more adrenaline to stay in that state. You know, sort of staying in an anxious frame of mind becomes a habit to horse or human. You have to actively go and break that cycle, and you have to interrupt that pattern of anxiety time and time again. For this horse, you know, this isn't 1,000 times we've had to interrupt it, that we might have to do it 1,000,000 times before she makes a nice change. What's interesting is this mare has such a softness about her. She's got this gorgeous mane, and the quickest way I've found to bond with her is to go pick her mane and you know, rub through her tail, and she stands so quietly and is so engaging. I could just imagine some little kid just being in love with this horse. But if she still has all the anxiety associated with that saddle, you know, it's still a bit of a time bomb. So we're going to have to go through 1,000,000 of these to help her change before her neurochemistry comes right. There's not a single horse who can't be helped. Most of the time when horses like this kind of get their last shot, they do go through a very heavy desensitizing process. Some of them come out of it fine. It might be an appropriate release of timing, a fortunate release of timing, put it that way, and things come out okay. But more often than not, we see that they don't come okay. Maya Angelou, when you know better, do better. That's what we're trying to do by sharing all of this with you guys, is what this horse needs is better than what she has been given. And I think when it comes to desensitizing your horse, or having your horse not become overly sensitive to an object or idea, we can put a lot more thought into it to have it A, be safer for horse and human, B, be more effectual than just strapping a terrifying object to them and hoping for the best. And C, this is something that just about anybody could do and reproduce if they had the willpower to do it enough times to make a change. This isn't dangerous. This isn't hard on the horse or human. And I think that merits a lot of thought. If you have some questions about your desensitizing process, then this might be the video for you.
Just a quick one, sorry to interrupt, Jamie, you can get back to what I keep working at. Two things there. She defecated, so, and I hear a lot of people say, oh look, the horse is pooping, it's relaxing. That is not true at all. A horse can do that mid-gallop and mid-flight. There is no evidence that shows that a horse defecating indicates relaxation. So that is not reason to say that the horse is relaxed. They can still do that.
That's actually a key factor between a predator and a prey animal. You know, predators can only defecate on the move if they are really scared and sure they're going to die. The rest of the time, everything tightens up. With horses, when they need to take flight, everything has to loosen up in order for them to move. Good point.
So what I'm looking for in the circle right now is even the circle with her with the saddle on comes a point that I can give release. So she's moving around. When I introduced the saddle, did introduction of rhythmic. and I could take it away and leave it on. Only when she stood still did I give a release with the saddle on. Now I'm looking, she's tolerating it, so I want to build that acceptance. So what I look for is, right now I'm looking for the head to be down to give a release. Down the line I might progress that to head being down, eye being soft, nose being relaxed, maybe a nice droopy lip. And that's the way I'm going to progress that movement, movement-based desensitizing, which we call active desensitization. Okay, Jamie, sorry. Can you keep going back there?
So you can see that she has learned to go through the four core movements with, with enough softness and precision. So now, as Gareth said, he's going to start changing that goalpost slowly of what he accepts as relaxation. So in the beginning, if she could just stop moving her feet and take herself out of flight, that was a spot to take pressure off and give the release that we'll teach. As we progress, we're going to expect progressively more and more relaxation. If we aren't getting that relaxation, we can't go on to the next step, which is a big goal of riding and really sorting her problems out. We're still dealing with the saddle issue here. So she's had very little time with someone on her back. And that's because we're not willing to compromise her state of mind or our safety for the sake of making progress. When we do that, that's our ego taking over. And it's not really desensitizing. We're actually probably doing a lot more to damage our relationship with our horse than we could ever imagine. Nowhere in the history of the world has telling a woman to calm down ever been an effective way to get a woman to calm down. When you talk about desensitizing and you use the process of flooding, oftentimes that's the case, especially when someone doesn't necessarily know what it is they're looking for, that point of relaxation that they're looking to release on. We're trying to keep everything well within a controlled measure, and the way that we judge that control is by reading all of these little signs on her. And she's a very hard horse to read because she's learned to hide from humans. So her feet look like they're moving. Her stride's just a little bit choppy. If you look at her tail when she comes around here, there's still a bit of a sharp angle, like just past the tail dock. That is all tension. You can see her neck muscles full of tension. One of the things that I always look for when I'm trying to decide, a horse like this, if they're really relaxed or not, is if I can hear those feet thudding on the ground, chances are there's probably still a lot of tension in there. Her feet are starting to lighten up, but you can see the muscles across her bum and her flank are still very, very tense. Yeah, so breathing's kind of around, because, to be able to, somewhat hold your breath for that long is laborsome. That actually takes a lot of energy to try and hold that tension. So that's going to be one of the signs that we look for to see if we're making a change in this mare and that she's earned a release. You can see she kind of slows down, she speeds up, she has sort of like little power surges. And where she has those power surges might be over here by the camera. She wants to hurry up and get through here quicker. When she's behind Gareth and the eyes are off of her, she kind of relaxes and goes, well, I'd really like to find a rest spot over here. You can still see that tail's very straight instead of soft and sort of floppy and flowy. Her eyes are softening. She's slowly making attempts.
There we go. Okay, so I'm going to look for the slightest drop to be able to give a disengage and ask her to come in.
One of the things that people often talk about is, Jamie, I made sure I did all of my anti-flights. I made sure that I really checked my horse out, and everything seemed fine. What we're trying to help you guys notice is you really got to look closely sometimes, especially as your horses have been in development for a long time. That's a fantastic looking shoe, where they're okay enough. But kind of okay enough isn't always as okay as it needs to be for you to make make it to the next step. So be that, you know, riding out of the round corral, riding in the arena, riding out of the arena, going on outrides, taking your horse to a show. You know, okay enough is enough to keep you safe in the immediate present. Is it okay enough for the long term? Probably not. And it's always disturbing to me to have people, have wrecks on their horses, especially after they've learned this and they do know this. And I always hear that, but everything checked out fine. Clearly, it did not. And one of the things that I think we see often is that people are going through the movements for the sake of going through the movements. We can't just go through the movements for the sake of the movements. We need to go through to provide relaxation, and that's how we're going to cause our horses to become truly desensitized. And the difference between desensitizing and sort of active desensitizing and this is we're trying to keep the natural sensitivity of the horse in there.
Okay guys, please like and share our videos. I really want to get this YouTube channel getting to more people and having more people see these things so that they can stay safer, have a better time with their horses have a better time. So if this video gets 100 likes, I'll do a naked ride and provide photographic evidence. Cheers guys.